Thank you for joining me once again. I'm very happy to engage you this morning and to raise a number of issues that are current and pertinent to your lives. I promised you in my post that today I would deal with the monetary policy report from the central bank, which takes us up to the end of November 2019 and which was published a few days ago. And I will do that. But there are so many things happening in the country and so many things that are causing distress in the country. I want to share and speak to some of these issues before I go on to the monetary report. First of all, I am not happy this morning. I'm very angry actually, because I went to the bank yesterday. I had to do a small transaction. It had nothing to do with the changing of $100 bills. But when I went there were very long lines inside the bank. And the build-up over this $100 issue was beginning to happen. And today, I sense that there are long lines, and what is disturbing about all of this is the number of old people and elderly people who are caught up in this business. And I really think that the government, whatever their good intentions, and I can understand the concern about drug money, I can understand the concern about illicit cash, I can understand the concern about gang money, I can understand the concern about creating the framework in which they can demand legitimate taxes from existing businesses in the country and basically force the informal economy to take a more formal role in the economy. But I cannot understand the insensitivity to the cultural realities of Trinidad and Tobago. I cannot understand the insensitivity to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And I can't understand, despite their old talk, the unpreparedness for this particular exercise and the stress that it is causing to people at Christmas time as they have to line up to deal with these realities. So that is one of the things that I'm very upset about. The second thing is that, you know, you would read in the papers today that basically the UNIPET and PARIA sat down to work out a resolution to this impasse in which PARIA had taken the position that they would not supply gas to UNIPET. And when I raised this matter in the finance debate, I only said one sentence about it. I said that the government had generally mismanaged the energy sector, and the Prime Minister took offense to that and got up to speak afterwards and gave us a long diatribe of excuses. And in making the case of how they had mismanaged the energy sector, after mentioning a number of things, I mentioned that there was an unequal battle now being waged by PARIA against the UNIPET dealers. Now, I want to say this. PARIA is a state enterprise. The government put their own board in PARIA. And I suspect when PARIA took the decision to withhold gas from the UNIPET companies, it was under political instruction. I have no way of proving this, but I understand this culture. I know the PNM. I understand Colm Imbert. And I know how this government operates under Rowley. And it is an authoritarian and draconian government in its dealings with the citizens of this country. I had the opportunity to say in that finance debate that everybody is afraid of them because they are terrorizing the entire business community. And today they are now terrorizing the citizens of this country, notwithstanding all their claims that they want to deal with drug money and so on. Up to now, they have not dealt with the 200 gangs in this country, gang leaders in this country, and the 2,500 gang members in this country that the Attorney General identified in the Parliament as known realities of Trinidad and Tobago. That is a known fact, that involve known facts to the government. And we have 500 plus murders now in this country. And so they took a political decision. They decided to squeeze UNIPET. Now I want to understand something. UNIPET is a private organization and all the dealers are small businessmen. All right? You don't make a ton of money from running a gas station. Okay? You make money, of course, because it's a cash business at the pump. But you do not make a ton of money from running a gas station. And in addition to that, you have NP, which is a state enterprise, and the terms and condition of supply of fuel and the terms of and conditions of the arrangements between Paria and NP and UNIPET are unequal. That is why I raised the issue of the unequal relationship. And the Prime Minister, of course, got up in his high horse and said, why don't I talk to the petroleum dealers and UNIPET to pay, rather than come here and support their cause and how they took them to court. I mean, if a citizen or a group of citizens doesn't have recourse to the courts of the land, what kind of country is that? And after all the high horse and the old talk, all right, what I said was correct, because it was an unequal battle and it was an authoritarian intervention by the state, and it was an unfair decision by Paria, which is why they put their tail between their legs and called in the parties, and they sat down together to work out a workable arrangement. Why couldn't they have done it before without starting a war and putting the country under stress? Long lines by the gas station. Sunday night I went to a meeting in San Fernando, and I wanted to get some gas at the NP station on the way there. The UNIPET station on the way there. And the UNIPET station was closed, and when I went to the NP station, the lines were so long, I decided not to do it. I got gas the next day. So, I mean, I am just fed up of the government now, just like all of you. And I've just about had it with it. And some people are saying that we shouldn't change the money, we should change the government. And I want to say that that is my view. We will have no peace. We will have no personal security. We will have no order in this country, only chaos. We will not have any good governance in Trinidad and Tobago. Our economy is going to hell. Our financial system is virtually collapsing and dwindling the foreign exchange every day. And the end result of this is that there is only one solution for this country, which is that we have got to unite. We've got to come together, the citizens of this country. We've got to get the UNC to prepare an agenda that serves the best interests of Trinidad and Tobago over the long term in terms of policy and plans and priorities. And on the basis of that, we have got to unite to remove the PNM and the Rowley government, and then we put the UNC in power, and we create the conditions for reasonable and sane and good governance in Trinidad and Tobago, because this country has many challenges. I share that with you this morning, and as you can tell, I am not happy about what is happening to our country. I'm not happy about the role of the government. What did Rowley get up to speak for? You know what he got up to speak for? He got up to speak because I said they are ruining the energy sector, which they are. There are every single downstream industry in the Point Lisas estate is under severe stress. And they are all going to become uncompetitive if they do not manage this thing properly, and these things are going to collapse. The Point Lisas estate itself is in jeopardy. All right, and I don't want to go into all the other things like Yara, starting with ArcelorMittal, the recent thing with Unilever, etc., which is a manufacturing enterprise outside of the Point Lisas estate. I don't want to go into that. But they have just mashed up the energy sector by their incompetence and their unwillingness to look holistically at the energy sector, look at the competing interests between the producing, what will get people to produce, how could you upgrade the quantity of gas and oil that comes to the country, how could you increase the revenues, and what is the share that you make possible between Atlantic LNG on the one side, selling LNG abroad, and the downstream industries on the other, which have the capacity to develop a further manufacturing sector and capability in Trinidad and Tobago that is competitive. So those are the issues. So he got up to defend that. The second thing that he got up to defend is that I said that were it not for the UNC in the opposition, they would have ridden roughshod over the people of this country and the institutions of this country. They already have, but it would have been worse. When I think of how many things that we have had to fight them in Parliament, where they've come and told the country that we are unpatriotic, that we are subversive, and when they are subverting the economy, the financial system, they are subverting the democracy in this country. God alone knows if they are not subverting the election process itself. All right, we will come to that at some point in time when we look at the numbers. And this government is getting away with murder, literally, in Trinidad and Tobago. 500 people have been killed for this year. We're going to break a record this year. And my sisters and brothers, so he was angry because I said the UNC had defended the citizens of this country and we had prevented the government from riding roughshod. And the third thing he was angry about, which he got up to explain, was that they did not buff up everybody, including the oil and gas companies. They cowed the business sector. They impose taxes on them. They do the thing back to front, which is that they bring the incentives in the fourth year and they bring the taxes in the first and second years. And therefore they created lack of confidence in the country. And the end result of all of that was what we have now, which is a country that has been deteriorating markedly. From 2016 with decline, 2017 with decline, 2018 with decline, and we headed for declines in 2019 and 2020 with this government. We're going to have 5 years of decline with the Rowley government in Trinidad and Tobago. By the time they're ready to go, we will have $5 billion in foreign exchange, which will take us about 5 months of import cover, and God alone knows what will be the debt. Close to about 160 billion in indebtedness, likely to climb if they take more money, take more loans. So they are putting this country in a hell of a mess, and all the citizens with it. They are mortgaging our future. Our children who are educated cannot get jobs. When they get jobs, they cannot get opportunity. Our children who are leaving the high school system have no opportunity whatsoever. There's nothing that they can do unless they go on to tertiary education or some kind of vocational education. And they close down half the vocational educational sectors, institutions in Trinidad and Tobago, which the UNC government under Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bisasa put in place in Trinidad and Tobago. Because our approach was always people-centered, it was always human-centered, it was always human development-centered, it was always education and opportunity-centered in Trinidad and Tobago. Because you cannot build a modern society unless you build up the human capital of your country, the intellectual capital, unless you educate your people and give them an opportunity to help you transform the economy. So this is where we are, sisters and brothers, and if I sound a little angry today, it is because I am angry. I'm very, very frustrated at the government, and I think we have to do something. I don't think we can continue as usual in this country. We've got to hold the government to account. The government has not proclaimed the procurement legislation yet. They're accusing the UNC of every nefarious act under the sun, lying, making up stories, yoking things together in order to give the impression that the UNC is the most corrupt party that has ever passed through this country. And the PNM has every single procurement in the last 4 years has taken place without procurement legislation being intact. They have government-to-government arrangements over which we have no scrutiny. They have arrangements with the Chinese government where you do not know what they are mortgaging to the country. You have concessional rates, it is true, but God alone knows what are the terms and conditions. And, you know, I really feel that we have to put a stop to this, my brothers and sisters. I am not joking. We have to put a stop to this. When somebody choking you and they on your windpipe and you cannot breathe, you have to make yourself ready to do something desperate to get those hands from your throat and to allow yourself to breathe so that you can have life. And I think that we've got to do this in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm appealing to you, I'm talking to you, and I want you to summon your courage. I want you to be able to stand up. I want you to be able to tell the government that they are accountable to us. What they are doing is that they are making everybody in this society accountable to them. Who the hell are they? They are the elected representatives of the people. We put them there. And they are making you accountable to them when they should be accountable to you. And we have to put the government under scrutiny of the highest order and bring them to book, bring them to task. And they are the government. Nobody else is the government. And we have got to take the necessary steps to do this. I promised you I would talk about the monetary policy report. And I will just spend a few minutes on that because I want you to ask questions, okay? Because if I have to, I will do a second program on the monetary report. But I want to let you know what the central bank governor and the central bank technician says in this monetary report. And I want to say that I am also not happy about the way the Minister of Finance rides roughshod over the governor of the central bank and the central bank as an institution. I am also not happy of the role of the political directorate in financial matters in this country, especially related to monetary policy. I want to say also that this central bank report was supposed to be launched on the Friday that we debated the finance bill. Sorry, about the Friday before the Friday that we debated the finance bill, and it was not launched. It was only launched on the Thursday evening before the finance bill, so we had it Friday morning before the finance bill. So it was launched a week late. It was put forward a week late. And there is no question in my mind that there is a hell of political interference, hell of a lot of political interference into the central bank monetary policy, the management of the foreign exchange system, and I think that we are going to pay dearly for that at some point in time. So having said that, I want to say this to you. The first thing would you remember is that Carl Mimbert, as Minister of Finance, pegged the gas price at $3 US dollars per MMBTU, and he pegged the oil price at $60. Let me tell you what the central bank says. Crude oil prices fell by 18.9% year on year, that is to say this year compared to last year, to an average of 56.42 per barrel, which is less than $60. And between May and October 2019, and reached a high of 60.84, which is 84 cents more than the peg price in May. Milder weather conditions accounted for the fall in natural gas prices, which declined by 18.2% year on year to average 2.42 per million British thermal units MMBTU, which means that this was 58 cents lower than the $3 price that Carl Mimbert had. What is the meaning of that? The implication of that is that if you peg your price of oil and gas too high, and it turned out that the reality is that the price of oil and gas is lower, then the revenue that you project is not going to be realized, and you're going to have a shortfall. And that has implications for revenue collection, for revenue acquisition. It has implications for the amount of money that you actually have to spend, and it has implications for the deficit. Okay? The second thing is that there is not only a fall in price in relation to the projected prices by the government and the Minister of Finance, but there is a drop in production. All right? There are declines in liquefied natural gas production. This is on page 2 of the document. Liquefied natural gas LNG production declined primarily due to a maintenance shutdown and power outages at Atlantic LNG facility in June 2019. Preliminary estimates for the first half of 2019 suggest that activity remained moderate in the non-energy sector. So we have a decline in gas, we have a decline in oil production, and then activity declined in several crucial subsectors such as manufacturing, construction, and distribution. Okay? So every single sector of importance is declining: manufacturing, construction, distribution, natural gas, and petroleum, that's to say oil. Okay? The other thing that I want to tell you here is that based on CSO numbers, the central bank tells us that the number of retrenched persons is less now. That is because most of them were retrenched before, and they say that the unemployment rate is better, and that is again because most of the people have lost their jobs before. Because what they say after that is that they say that the participation in the labor force is only 58%. It has dropped again, which means to say people are either dropping out of the labor force, not looking for jobs, they're probably looking to migrate, and this has serious implications for the future of the economy, because if you do not have participation by the labor force in the economy, it affects your entire productivity matrix. Then what it said what it says about expenditure is that contrary to the government position that they bring in expenditure down, the central bank says total expenditure surpassed that of 2017-18. So in 2018-19, the expenditure was higher than the year before, owing to increases in most areas of current spending. Although expenditure rose, a substantial increase in revenues contributed to the central government realizing a smaller deficit. So they ended up with a small deficit because although they spent more, they got more revenue. And how you think they got that revenue? They got the revenue because the Kamala Prasad Bisesa government made a decision in 2011, after nearly 1 decade of no drilling in Trinidad and Tobago, no bid rounds, no investment in the energy sector. We took a decision in 2011 to 2014, which led to Juniper, which led to Truck, which led to Angeline, which are producing the gas now, which is the only thing that is keeping the country financially afloat. The central bank goes on to say here, activity in the key non-energy sectors of the domestic economy had not yet reflected substantial spillover effects of increased government capital spending. What they are saying, in spite of Rohan's overpass in Curep, in spite of what they are doing on the road to Toko, it has not had an impact on the rest of the economy, the non-energy part of the economy. And basically they say private sector business credit had not recovered markedly. So people are not borrowing from the banks. And I want to tell you something, because the Colin Imbert came one day. All he does is fool the people, mesmerize the people, and misinterpret and misrepresent the information. So they say here, for instance, growth in private sector credit continued to be supported by consumer and real estate mortgage lending. But listen to this next sentence. Much of this consumer lending was related to refinancing and debt consolidation. Okay? Business lending remained weak, especially to the construction and manufacturing sub-sectors. So the lending that is taking place is really for the refinancing of debt and the consolidation of business lending. Okay, the foreign exchange market remained relatively tight over the first 10 months of 2019, which means that foreign exchange is still scarce, and the country's gross official reserves stood at 7.110 million. That, by the way, is nearly 800 million less than the last central bank report, which had it at 7.9 billion at the end of October 2019, compared with 7.5 at the start of the year. Okay? And there are other things here that I can point to, that I can raise. As I said, I want to be short because I want to give you an opportunity to ask some questions. Okay? But I will, in the domestic economic conditions, this is on page 12, I will share just a couple of things with you. Total natural gas production declined by 0.7%. Crude oil output fell by 12.1%. We are now at 59,000 barrels. And then they say this largely reflects inadequate investment in the industry over time, especially given the mature nature of the acreage. So there's no investment there. The depth drilled fell. Okay, that is to say how deep they drilled in the wells fell. The number of rig days fell. The refining activity, of course, is nil, because, as you know, the refinery is shut down and they're now trying to get it on. Yara has been shut down. They mentioned that here. All right, and then the construction sector is down Early estimates suggest that economic activity decreased by 2.6%. Lower levels of activity were reported. Remember I say in manufacturing and in construction and in energy. All right, I had mentioned before, and look here now, that reported lower levels in food, drink and tobacco, 0.9%. That is one of the strongest sectors in manufacturing. Construction-related chemicals and not metallic minerals, 8.6% decline, and printing and publishing, 7.9% decline in all of these subsectors. So no matter what cock and bull they come and tell you, and no matter how much they rage, no matter how much they come and rant and rave and talk about the UNC 5 years from 2010 to 2015, no amount of how much they tell you that they have been good custodians of this economy, the numbers do not bear that out. They have mismanaged the economy, they have mismanaged the finance, they have mismanaged the governance. They have put this country in a mess. They have put the energy economy in jeopardy, my brothers and sisters. And I want to just leave you with one thing before I go. The last report that the central bank did, all right, the same monetary report, all right, the last one that they did, the debt was, the official debt was mentioned as 102 billion. It has gone up by $1 billion, 0.4. It says at the end of September 2019, the public debt reached 103.4 billion, or 63.3% of the GDP, and it was 60.1% before. And as I told you, there's a difference between debt and indebtedness. This is the official debt, but they have another 60 billion in indebtedness. You're talking about 160, 170 billion dollars in indebtedness. And more than that, they say there was very little spending in the PSIP because so you had a very reduced public sector spending. And all of that has implications for a sense of security, confidence in the economy, and the willingness of other investors to invest. My sisters and brothers, the confidence in this economy is very low. Nobody is investing here. Nobody wants to invest. Okay? The people who are, the competitiveness here is so bad. We have fallen on the competitiveness index. The ease of doing business is so bad. The corruption index has gone up under the watch of the PNM, under the watch of Rowley, who claims to be the most honest politician in the face of the earth. And the end result of that is that the competitiveness capacity of Trinidad and Tobago is dwindling, and therefore the competitiveness of industries is dwindling. And we are going to have a situation where, with lack of confidence and lack of competitiveness, even the businesses that we own here in Trinidad and Tobago, owned by local private sector, are going to create their production systems outside where it's more competitive, and they are going to export to Trinidad and Tobago using logistical capacity, all their vans and distribution system in Trinidad and Tobago. That is a danger point that we don't want to get to. And I tell you, unless we remove this government, we are going to get there. So my appeal to you is that what is needed now is strength. What is needed now is resolve. What is needed now is a capacity for resistance. We may have to get to the point where we simply hold this government to account, insist that they account to us, and basically tell them that we're not moving, all right, unless they account to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. We may get there. So I close at this point, and I ask you to ask me any questions. If I can answer them, I will answer them as fully as I can. If I can't answer them, I will tell you so, and I will be honest and straightforward with you as I normally am. Thank you very much.
So good morning, Dr. Tewarie, and good morning to our viewers via Facebook and our listeners via 97.5. This morning we do have a few questions. One question that we have from Facebook is that, do you think there's a connection with the recent fuel issue and the change of the $100 bill?
I don't think that there is any direct connection, but I think what we need to understand is that Tewarie is now importing fuel, and before the refinery used to provide all the fuel for us and also export to CARICOM and other places, so that while we might have been earning foreign exchange before, we now have to find foreign exchange to support this business. All right, so that is one issue. The second thing is that I imagine, because the government is not paying VAT and is not providing the subsidies that are due to UNIPET and so on, I'm sure they're doing it for NP. What is happening is that you have an unequal relationship, and then what is happening is that Tewarie is trying to punish UNIPET as a private sector operation and supporting the state enterprise, which means that you have an unequal situation in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of economic capacity for competitiveness. And what you have is that the state sector is conspiring with the government in order to squeeze out what are essentially private sector players which have been created in this country. So this debate not finished yet, you know. All right, they feel they get away because I raised one sentence about this, and he get away and make a long tirade and he think it over. But he had to pull his legs, the tail between his legs, and go and solve the problem, because there would have been thousands of lines in the country had they not solved the problem. You can't keep hold a country to ransom like that. So the connection might be because of what has happened to the foreign exchange situation there. But I think that the issue of the $100 bill is isolated from this. And I think the real move behind the $100 bill is really to capture illicit money, and also to be able to zero in on the informal economy in Trinidad and Tobago. And there are more things that I will say about that and can say about that. I don't want to get, there's a whole argument about this thing. All right, there's a man who 2 years ago wrote a book called The Stealth of Nations, in which he talked about the relationship between the informal and the formal economy. Everything in the informal economy is driven by the formal economy, including in Trinidad and Tobago. And there are those who take the FATF view and who take the financial system view, global financial system view, that what you have to do is to stamp out the informal economy and get them to integrate into the formal economy. And there are those like the author of that book, The Stealth of Nations, who argue that the informal economy is the second most important economy in the world. In fact, it is larger than the economy of China. And he argues that because of that reality, the approach to the informal economy has to be a little different. And were it not for the informal economy, developing countries would not get a chance to develop at all, and millions of jobs that are created by these informal economies would not be created. So there's plenty to say about this, and what we have now is only ignorance and spite and authoritarian tendencies. And all they talk about colonialism, all they are doing is bending to the will of the financial powers in the global system without being in a position to advocate a case on behalf of this country, which is different from any European country and different from the United States of America as an economy. And therefore, they are not taking the cultural realities and the points of economic evolution at which we are into account in making their case in the world. And therefore, we have a set of nincompoops representing us in the global arena and punishing the local population. But as I said, there's a lot to say about that, and we will deal with it. I have said nothing about this thing. We support, the UNC support this thing. We will see. After the chaos and the confusion, we may have a chance to intervene in this matter. But it's not over yet. And this, so the things are separate, but they are both causing distress.
Dr. Tewarie, the finance minister made statements in Parliament recently which was perceived as an insult to farmers and fishermen of this nation. Do you think that the minister's behavior reflects the level of consideration given to the public when policies are introduced?
Yes, I think so. There is absolutely no consideration, in my view, for poor people by this government. The poor are really at a wit's end in Trinidad and Tobago. I said that in the Parliament on Friday. There is absolutely no consideration for family businesses and small businesses in this country, or the cultural realities that are manifest in the creation of these businesses. If you are interested in strengthening families and you're interested in strengthening businesses, you would want to strengthen family businesses and small and medium enterprises. Bermuda's was a small business that became big. Arthur Lockjack's business was a family business that became big. Neil and Massey was Neil and Massey, they became big. Ansa McCall was the Sabga family business that became big. And so all around, S.M. Jalil, Solo, Joseph Charles, I mean, wherever you can think about it. And therefore, I think that there is a total misunderstanding of this economy and the economic dynamics here. That is why they laugh at growth poles and talk about greasy poles. That is why they have no interest in decentralization and devolution. That is why they do not understand how the local economy works in relation to macroeconomic strategy. That is why they don't understand the relationship between macroeconomic strategy, the strategy for Tobago on the one hand and the 14 local government districts on the other, the growth poles that surround these areas, the economic zones that you can develop around these things, and the 600 communities or so that constitute Trinidad and Tobago. If you understood that, you would not make an ass of yourself in Parliament as they do by trying to make the small man seem insignificant and negligible. And a lot of people in this country build their family businesses from absolutely nothing. Bermuda's was saying at one of the chambers the other day, Robert Bermuda's, he was saying that when his family came here, running away from political problems in Venezuela, I think he said 103 years ago. When they came to Trinidad and Tobago, they came here with just the simple homemade technology of how to make biscuits. And look how that business has evolved now, out of nothing. It's just like the fellow who is making doubles, or it's just like a fellow who is selling burger on the corner, or just like a fellow who is creating some kind of thing in order to sell, you know. And I think this government is very, very contemptuous of poor people. They're very contemptuous of their effort. They only understand big business, and they are only comfortable with those things, but they don't understand that every big business was once a small business, and it got there by evolution and by commitment and by hard work and dedication, and by getting breaks in the economy that allow them to survive and to strive. Okay? So, as far as I'm concerned, what it reveals is the ignorance of the Minister of Finance about the society in which he operates, the contempt he has for ordinary people, and his lack of cultural sensitivity, and his lack of an appreciation of how business grows in an economy.
Dr. Tewarie, given the financial situation of our nation under this administration, is it likely that we would have to unfortunately resort to the IMF in the future if things continue to go the way it does?
I don't know if we will get there. What I do know is that at the end of 2020, if they call the election anytime in 2020, what is going to happen is that we're going to have $5 billion of foreign reserves. And we are going to have a debt of nearly 170, 180, indebtedness of about 170, 180 billion. We're going to have a continuing declining economy. And we're not going to be able to service that debt, and we are going to be in a problem. And having said that, these problems are solvable. I mean, Barbados had over 100% debt, all right? Nearly 150, 160% debt. But with leadership, you can solve these problems. Jamaica had to go to the IMF. They could not survive without it, but they are out of it now. They're growing at 1%, 2%, etc. Small growth, but they're growing and people are investing and they are doing things and so on. I don't know. The minister said that they avoided going to the IMF because they would have caused them to remove the subsidy from the hospitals and the health system, and they would have caused them to cut the financing, the gate for tertiary education. But the minister has offered no evidence that the IMF approached the government of Trinidad and Tobago, his government, the Rowley government, to enter into a conditional agreement with the IMF. And the government has not indicated to us that they approached the IMF to go into a conditional agreement with the IMF for a loan and to negotiate those conditions. So I don't know what they are talking about. I don't know if we're going to have to go to the IMF for support. It depends on the conditions that they leave. But what I know is that given what they are doing, they are creating the conditions for severe stress on the population, the economy, the finances of this country.
Dr. Tewarie, do you think that the PNM is investing too much in the Ministry of National Security without being mindful of stabilizing and improving other ministries?
Well, it's hard to say. If you take the amount of money that they put in the Ministry of National Security and you divide it by 500 murders, you will see how much money it is costing for one murder in this country. Okay? So I don't want to be crass and do something like that. And it is unscientific anyway. It is not a good way of assessing anything. But I just want to be dramatic just for a moment about it. And I'm honest enough to tell you that it's not a reasonable way to explain what is happening with expenditure. But what I do know is that we are not getting value for money. Because the only value for money that we can get is if the murders come down, if the gang leaders are brought to trial and dealt with by the law, if the gang members are brought to trial and dealt with by the law, and if the crime generally begins to come down and be contained in this country. The only way we can determine value is if we have not community policing, but police in community, in which there's a relationship between the police and the community, and that community relationship with the police works to keep down murders, to keep down crime, to keep the community safe, and basically to create an atmosphere for industry, leisure, and prosperity in the communities. And there are 600 communities in Trinidad and Tobago. So I would say that we are not getting value for money for the amount of money we spend in national security, and I will leave it at that. And I would say that the political directorate is not effective in dealing with crime in Trinidad and Tobago, and certainly not effective in dealing with murders.
Dr. Tewarie, Trinidad and Tobago demands effective and adequate leadership to move forward. Do you think that the leadership is a critical element in determining the success and failures of various governments?
Leadership is 90% of everything. All right? If you do not have leadership with courage, with resolve, and leadership that listens, and leadership that understands what the issues are, and out of the understanding of the issues can design and come up with options and can communicate those options to the population and then explain to the population why a likely option is going to be chosen. Having explained all the attendant costs and benefits of each option so the population understands and they are able to sink in, and then get the population behind you to move to the next set of strategic efforts that you must do in order to move a country and a population forward sustainably. If you don't have that kind of leadership, we can't just get this country back on track in Trinidad and Tobago. And I want to say that this government, the Rowley government, cannot do that. I think we have a very, very good chance if we were to have Kamala Persad-Bissessar in the leadership of this country as Prime Minister. And if she pulls together a good team of people, which would require energy, which would require dedication, which would require knowledge, which would require self-discipline, which would require teamwork and cohesion, which would require clarity of policy, which would require competence all around, which would require experience as well as new and fresh talent, and which would require managerial ability and capability and competence, as well as coordination capacity for results. If she could put a government like that together, I think that given her experience, given her knowledge, given her disposition, given her love of the people and her sensitivity to the difficulties and the plight of the people, and her sense of fairness, all right, about the gaps between rich and poor, I think we are likely to be on the right track. So I think the country should think seriously about giving the UNC and Mrs. Bissessar a chance.
Dr. Tewarie, one of the questions that we have from a viewer this morning is, why do you think that the Rowley government is out of touch with reality and the true state of Trinidad and Tobago on what it really looks like?
Because they have nobody in the government that has their ears to the ground, and they don't have anybody who really comes out of the people, who live with the people. You see, I mean, people may look upon me. I was principal of the University of the West Indies. I was at the Arthur Lockjack School. I deal in intellectual matters. People may see me as an academic. They may see me as having intellectual interests and so on. But I live in Kunupil. I live in home farms. All right? I walk on the street where I live. All right? I sometimes go for a walk for an hour. People stop me as I walk. All right? The communities around me, they know me. I engage people all the time. I walk in my constituency. And that is true of everybody in the UNC. You know, they may be doctors, they may be lawyers, all right? They may have their professions, etc. But they are people-centered, they are people-oriented people. And they are in touch with the ordinary people. I don't know that there is anybody in the PNM who are really in touch with the people in the communities in which they live. Perhaps with the exception of Marlene MacDonald, who is very rooted in her community. But the rest of them, they're totally divorced. They make a distinction between administration and service. And they make a distinction between being a parliamentarian and the people. They make a distinction between being a member of government, a minister, and being in the executive and the people. They have no connection, in my view, with the people. And therefore they can't be sensitive and make policies for the people. They are more comfortable in other areas where they can, meet with other people who are really not grassroots.
Dr. Tewarie, millions of dollars are invested into the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, yet there has not been any recent statistics to show the progress of this ministry. How does the government account to the public for wastage of resources given the silence in important ministries?
Okay, what ministry did you mention there? Housing?
Yeah.
Okay, well, the whole policy of the government in housing, in my view, is wrong, and it has been wrong for a long time. I really think that you cannot build housing. This issue of creating a big state apparatus to manage housing is ridiculous. Construction should be left to the private sector. Standards should be set by the state. The private sector should finance the thing and sell the houses to people so that you have a simple mortgage. When the private sector build a house or apartment, you have to pay down 10%. You have to go and pay down 20%, another 10%. And after, while you're paying down that 20%, you go to the bank and you get a mortgage, or you go to whatever state institutions. And where the government should spend their effort is not on building homes, is on dealing with the finance so that you make sure that everybody who wants a home can afford one, to deal with the job creation, to deal with the productivity question, to deal with the loan system that allows people to get a home. Because you do want a home-owning democracy in Trinidad and Tobago where everybody has a stake. You do want a land-owning democracy in which everybody has a stake. You do want the working class to come into shareholdership and share ownership in Trinidad and Tobago. That is the policy of the UNC. We believe in that, a home-owning democracy, a land-owning democracy, a shareholding, stockholding or shareholding democracy. And that is what you should focus on. Let the private sector go and build the houses. I do not believe in all this state intervention in housing, all these bonds and so on where they're taking people money and giving them 4%. I believe all of that are really convoluted financial schemes to keep the state power intact.
Dr. Tewarie, one comment that we have this morning is the nation would like to remind the government that we are all human beings and we are concerned about our future, but we need to be assured that our financial obligations are not used to manipulate us. How can a government reassure us of a financial security when at any point we can fall into a socio-economic crisis?
Well, we are already in a socio-economic crisis, my dear. I don't know if that is a man or a woman, but we are already in a socio-economic crisis. I'm telling you, we are in a financial crisis. The financial crisis has to do with the dwindling foreign exchange reserves, the fact that we are not earning foreign exchange from exports except energy, that we are having no investment that is export-oriented. And really, we are in a hell of a situation. And add to this the $160, $170 billion in indebtedness that we have to pay back. All right? We are in an economic crisis. We have had 3 consecutive years of decline. The 4th year is going to be in decline. The World Bank optimistically projects 0%. It's going to be less than that. They are not going to get the Tewarie refinery, and in the central bank report I mentioned to you that the closure of the refinery represented a 17.5% decline. Okay? And there's no way that they're going to get that back up quickly. So we are in an economic situation, and I didn't mention the high unemployment. All right, I didn't mention the growing poverty. I didn't mention the distress that people have to live with to put food on the table, to buy books for their children. I don't know if this government understands what they are doing to the ordinary citizen in this country on the basis of the hunger that they are creating in the society, first of all, And secondly, the deprivation in education that we are causing for the young children in this society. Do they know the human and financial and economic cost of that in the long run? Do they understand that? I don't think they do, because if they did, they would not do what they are doing. They would not cause this unnecessary distress. Okay, so we are in a terrible, so we have a human capital crisis. We have a governance crisis in which they interfere in every blasted thing in the lives of people. Or they want to take away people's privacy. They want to interfere in everything that people are doing. Okay, and more than that, I think that we are in, people like to talk about moral and spiritual values, and that is something mentioned in the Constitution. I want to say we are in a deep moral and spiritual crisis in this country. You know, there is a total disconnect in this country from the sense of moral obligation and moral responsibility. And that the example is set in the domain of leadership in this country, and I charge the government with that. All right? There should be significant moral outrage in this country against the behavior of the government. All right? And I am not just talking about the report having to do with the Minister of Sport, ex-Minister of Sport. That is minor in the scheme of things, of matters you should be outraged about morally in this country. And there's a total spiritual disconnect in this society, and that is because we have not cultivated. People talk about prayers and they talk about God and they talk about religion, but that is not spirituality. All right? Spirituality would require us to take an important view of climate change and its consequences and what we should be doing. It should allow us to take a holistic view to the management of nature in society. It should allow us to take a holistic view to the whole business of development and how we go about development. It should allow us to deal with the issue of garbage. Pretty soon we're going to drown ourselves with garbage in Trinidad and Tobago. You know, I mean, to think about it really is really spiritually devastating, the kinds of things that are going on in this country. So it is not just an economic and financial crisis, it's a moral and spiritual crisis as well. And this government has to go.
Dr. Tewarie, one comment that we have this morning is, I see the change of the TT $100 as being a great initiative to remove some black money from the system. My question is, are there any downsides that I may not be seeing?
I think you are right as something dealing with black money, dealing with drug money, dealing with illicit cash, dealing with trying to bring people into the tax net. All right, it is a positive move. The problem is that I don't think that they thought this through properly. And I also think that there was a certain amount of vindictiveness involved in the draconian way in which they unleashed this measure. And the citizen is now feeling the brunt of it, and they will feel it for the next 14 or 21 days. I don't know. How they will feel after that is another matter. But the downside of it is really the banking system clearly wasn't ready. The people were not ready. The cultural realities of Trinidad and Tobago were not taken into account by the government. A lot of ordinary people are going to be under pressure. From the Minister of Finance's statement, you will see that they have total contempt for small business and micro businesses and people earning money from that. And finally, I think there is a total misunderstanding and misappreciation of the role of the informal economy and the new thinking about how you deal with informal economies that are driven by formal economies while dealing with black money and illegal business in the country. And I don't think the government has shown any sophistication in relation to that. And I also think in colonial style, they have bowed readily to the financial superstructure in the global system without articulating the case for Trinidad and Tobago as a society at our stage in development. Okay, we've reached the point now where we've covered 1 hour. I want to thank you for your questions. They were brilliant questions. I hope you think that I've answered them satisfactorily. I want to thank you very, very much for joining me again. We will put this up on Facebook so that you can take a look, those who have not seen it and those who would like to look at it again. And I want to thank all those listeners on 97.5 and our partners for this particular enterprise 97.5 Hot Like Pepper Radio for carrying this Facebook Live and for bringing it to the attention of the population. Thank you very, very much. And all things being equal, I'll see you next week, Tuesday, if not before. Thank you very much.